Hi, I'm Nico Hurtado. Today we're going to be going over how to do a color portrait in tattooing. I'm going to be working on my client Junior. He has an ongoing piece that we're going to be adding to. It's a portrait of a woman we took some pictures of. I'm going to cover the three most important things I think that make up a color portrait in tattooing. The first is stencil and position, the value of the piece, and then color choice. And to see more of my work, you can go to nicohurtado.com. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're starting to make the stencil, and I'm using a number 5 mechanical pencil on top of the copy that I made onto the piece of Thermofax paper. Right now I'm actually picking either value, shape, or color choice to stencil out. I'm just going around the shapes that I see, or whatever I think is important. It's real important to make your decisions on what you think, the kind of information you need when you're doing this piece. Make it readable so that way you can understand it. And I tend to go a little crazy with my stencils. It's just kind of where I'm comfortable, but make sure you're paying attention to where you're comfortable. Like, you don't want to put too much information that then get confused. You want to just put enough to where you can read it. You'll probably go through a lot of lead like I do. Pressing hard, I tend to break it a lot. So yeah, just make decisions. Make sure you put what you think is important. Usually when I go through the hair, I'll use like a back and forth motion, just following the direction. I really don't worry about, too much of the shapes. Just kind of go through the dark value and, go back and forth. You'll see little strands of hair. I'll just outline really quick. Usually I like to get through the hair first because it's kind of the most boring part to stencil. Just try to get it through it real fast and then go through and start working on the face and getting those shapes. I always have a little more fun working on those, so I get through the boring part first. Now I'm starting to get the cheek. As you can see, like the value is there, isn't much different, but I want to make sure that I see the cheekbone there. That's why I kind of made those shapes right there like that. You're paying attention to where the cheek is and how it's shaped there. So yeah, I'm just going through the nose, finding every single little bit of detail that I think is important, and making sure that I'm not only doing my dark shapes, that I'm doing my highlights, because that's really going to help you in the end when you're putting your highlights, making sure they're in the right spot, making sure the piece looks right. So now I'm doing the eyebrows and just kind of go real quick. The eyes, making sure that I'm following it round, making sure I'm paying attention to the way the eyelid's going over the eyeball, and really showing that it's it's round in there, Now the lips real quick and kind of just doing the highlights. I actually really enjoy making my stencils. I think it's pretty fun. I like the way they turn out. What I do is I just make the photocopy and then get my Thermofax paper, lay it right above, and then trace right above that. Sometimes I'll trace right onto the paper, or I'll trace right above the whole Thermofax sheet and everything. As you can kind of see, I'm doing right now, making a hand stencil. I make this stuff. It's a melted down deodorant, green soap, and distilled water. What I do is I take one full stick of a deodorant and melt it in the microwave for about 10 seconds. Melts really quick, so you have to be careful. Then the same amount that comes out of that full stick, I mix half green soap and half distilled water to equal the same amount of the deodorant that I have that melted down. I mix that together and I put 2 caps of alcohol. It's the 2 caps from the alcohol bottle into that light concoction, and then I leave it alone for a little while. So as you can see right here, I just kind of pulled out the strip and was showing you how I get it ready, and then you can see how it turns out. That concoction works really well even with the handmade stencil that's not very dark. You kind of see how it turns out and how mine. So yeah, I use one sheet, lay it right above of the carbon paper, pull that out. You just want to get it there. Usually I'll tape it down so that way it doesn't move, because if it moves, you're going to mess the shape up. Then you just start tracing above it. And it should turn out something like that. Like I said, just make it to where you're comfortable. Don't go crazy. Mine tend to be crazy. Like I said, just be comfortable with it, because too much information sometimes isn't a good thing. You want to just make enough information that you can understand it. So right here, I'm going to get him ready. That's alcohol and green soap mixed together. I'm going to shave him down, clean him up, get him prepared for, the stencil and the tattoo. Make sure the skin's real clean, and, the area is real clean, so that way I'm not pushing no bacteria, nothing into his skin. So I shave him down real good, clean it off real well. Okay, so now I'm most likely going to grab my stencil, the stuff I just told you how to make. Make sure to put the placement in the right area. You don't want to blow a face up too big, because, you're working on something like a cylinder. You make it too big, the eyes are going to go real wall-eyed, and it's going to look real funny. You just want to make it big enough to where the eyes are looking in the same direction, and it's not too big for the spot. Usually the smallest I'll go to is like 3 to 4 inches from chin to forehead. So yeah, I put that stuff on. I wipe it down real light. Make sure it's just tacky. As you can see, it's pretty wet, but you don't want it too wet, because then it'll smear. So you press down real well, and then peel it back real slow. Make sure not to smear. There it is, real simple. And that's what the stencil look like. Make sure to let it dry for at least 10 to 15 minutes. It needs to dry really well. And for it to really settle, you don't want it smearing off. So we're going to go ahead and put the ink out. I'm using a triple black from Eternal. It's then plum, blue, periwinkle, wild orchid, dark red, crimson red, and then light red, and then tangerine. It looks like magenta, and then it looks like another dark blue, light blue, white, gray, grape. Looks like a tangerine, and then something like Kool-Aid. Looks like Georgia peach. I got a flesh tone. I have a flesh pot from Intense, flesh from Intense. I think I have creamsicle out. I usually put 2 flesh pot. As you can see, there's a flesh, and then a flesh, and then a flesh pot, and a flesh pot. I put 2 out because one's for my warms, one for my cools, so that way they don't get all mudded up. Right here I'm putting dotted lines, that way I don't go lower than what he wants. He wants just kind of like, the half sleeve thing where it doesn't go below the elbow. So I use the dotted lines just to keep so I don't go too low and it doesn't, go further than he wants it. Right here I'm kind of adding some direction, adding some fit to the other piece that I have going on. Going to leave a little gap in between them, kind of give it its own little place. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. One thing I'd like people to know is that, right here I'm using a pneumatic machine. It's a great machine. I had a lot of fun with it. I still use coil machines, like the magnetic machines, and I love them. My favorite machine is an Aaron Kane machine. That's what I use. Most of my portfolio is done with that. I had a chance to use these, and I really liked them. They're really good. They kind of slowed me down a little bit, but the slowing down sometimes a good thing. Lets you get a little bit more detail, lets you build a little bit more. So yeah, I use both. This is really a good tool though. It's a fun tool. It's kind of cool it does something different than the regular coil machine will do. Lets you build a little slower, but recently I've been using my magnetic coil machines a little bit more. I'm a little bit more comfortable with them, a little bit faster. But I use the same motions, back and forth motions with both. They run pretty much the same. Actually been practicing with some rotary machines lately too. Right here I'm just kind of blocking in blacks. I'm using a mixture of black and purple to get these darks in there. I usually don't use black straight. I usually mix like purple or plum or blue or green into it, depending on on what I feel is the right area to use it. But right here, I'm definitely using a plum and black mixed. I really like the Eternal ink. It's working really good because it doesn't get really like a hard shell over it after about 4 or 5 hours. It stays really like soft on top. You know, I don't really have to put any water into it or anything like that when I put it out in my cap. Yeah, so I'm just blocking in this dark hair, looking at the picture, making sure like my direction's going the right way with the way the hair is rolling around. Kind of getting that end right there where I want it to fade off, kind of, you know, going along that green. So that way I'll make sure not to lose that because, you know, marker will wipe away pretty fast sometimes. So just blocking it in. And really just working it from the bottom up. I usually work from, you know, the bottom right-hand corner and go up to the top left corner. I do that because, you know, I don't want to wipe my stencil away. I used to block things in, but I just feel way more comfortable like this. If I'm doing 2 sittings, you know, this is one pass tattoo, but if just say I was going to do this in 2 sittings, you know, the guy wanted to only do 4 hours and then 4 hours or 3 hours and 3 hours or something. I would go through and kind of block the whole tattoo in like this, do all the blacks and then do colors that I think are important and just pass through that like that. But since we're going to be finishing it today, I'll usually get it to pretty much to completion in the area, except for, you know, any highlights. You know, I don't want to wipe any darks into my highlights, so I make sure that, you know, I just leave those open. So right now it looks like I'm mixing a little bit of green into my black instead of the purple. There's a little bit of green in there. Most likely it's probably, I don't know, like turquoise or something. So this is black and purple right there on that edge. And then as it gets closer to her neck, I'll be using a little bit of green with it. And you'll see right here. So I'm using green on this side of the hair, you know, for the shadowed areas. You know, there's a lot of red in the piece, so usually you want to use the opposite color. You don't need to be so straightforward with it. You know, you can mix a little bit more blue with it, or, you know, another little bit more purple into it just to kind of change the tone so that way it's not so straight across. But it's good to kind of play around with it. You can see it a little bit in the picture. The picture gives you a little bit of, so I'll kind of enhance it sometimes and make it a little bit more. So still just blocking this in, getting these areas in. And so yeah, it looks like I mixed a little bit of dark green actually and periwinkle color from Intense. I use this color a lot. It's a really good color. I use it for a lot of shadows, a lot of darker areas, kind of a little bit of a grayish color. It works real well. So it looks like I'm using a little bit of like purple and dark red and brown right here. And yeah, just following the flow of that hair, you know, looking at the picture and just really making sure I'm going the right directions. And this back and forth motion is really good to use. You know, it kind of lets you fade from one side to the other. You know, it doesn't give you such a hard edge. I know traditionally you want to use a circle motion, but since I'm just feathering it in, really going light, not really trying to pack it solid right away, I just kind of go, like right here, I'll use more of like a circle motion, kind of fade out if I want it solid right away. But the back and forth motion lets me build. You know, it's a real quick movement and doesn't really hit the skin too crazy hard. And it gets it in there, you know, it lets you build it up. So that's what I'm doing, just moving back and forth. And it looks like I'm using here like maybe some dark brown and purple, you know, maybe some red in there. Yeah, it looks like dark brown, dark red. Yeah, a little bit of water. One thing I do a lot is, you know, if I dip in my cap, I'll go ahead and dip into the water really quick. Kind of lets that ink get a little bit diluted and lets it move around on the skin. So that way it's not so thick. If it's thick ink, it kind of helps me move around. It helps me fade it off too and lets me build. So it looks like I'm using a little bit of crimson, red, and dark brown. And just kind of fading it back and forth. You know, it takes a little bit longer like this, but your fades and transitions will be really smooth, really soft. You know, it takes a little patience, but in the end result, you know, is what matters. These tattoos like this usually take me maybe 6-7 hours on average, you know. But if it takes you longer, don't worry about that. It's all about the end result, you know. Just take your time. Make sure you're paying attention to the shapes. Things you want to pay attention to is making sure you're going dark enough. Like a lot of these colors are pretty dark, but that area called for, you know, darker colors. And that's really what's going to make your highlights look better, because you're going to have a good contrast. So I'm going ahead and I'm budding up some red, some dark red right there with that green, and letting it transition out of the shadow into this, you know, little bit of a warmer, it's a warmer shadow out of the colder shadow. So yeah, just now using more of a traditional circle motion, since I know I want solid, I know what color I need, and just kind of getting it in there. And yeah, like I said, you know, I work the same way with the traditional machine, so these things can be applied. I just turn my machine way low. You know, I like a soft hitting machine. That's why these pneumatics felt really comfortable. Regular coil machines, you know, I like it to hit real soft also, you know. I really like these tubes I'm using also. These tubes are real nice. They're next generation tubes. You know, I'm using right now I'm actually using a 17 mag. I make them. They're bug pin needles, but it's in a 17 mag needle. It fits in a 15 mag tube. So it looks like I dipped from the dark reds into this tangerine color. It's a real good color for a lighter red. It's not too pink. It's not too orange. Probably looks a little bit more orange on here, but in person it's a little bit more red. It's a real nice color. So yeah, off that black right there, I use a lot of purple. Just kind of going off with the purple and fading it off, making a cleaner transition into the skin. I'm not going to make that area too solid off. There's going to be a little gap, because I want to tie these in together. And I like leaving some open skin in some areas, some negative. I like the way it works with the body sometimes. So that was like purple and periwinkle mixed. It's a nice color right there. I use that a lot, you know, just fading this off. Remember, like, I'm using a really thin needle, so I'm able to build a lot on the skin, you know, without really damaging the skin. My machine's also running really light, so, you know, it's not giving a whole lot of trauma. And that's why I'm able to go over the skin so much and kind of build up. Back and forth motion, you know, as I'm coming out, I'm using a little bit more water, you know, so that way it fades off into the skin. I'm tapping into the water every time I go from the ink caps to the skin. Rinse out my machine a lot, make sure it's clean, make sure I'm not muddying up my colors too. So I'm going off of the other one, doing a little bit of black. A little bit of black and purple. You can see it when I wipe it down, like there's that purple color in there. And you can see, like, I'm wiping away from my stencil, you know, making sure I'm not wiping my stencil off. You know, I want to wipe away. I don't want to wipe into it. You know, the more I wipe into it, the more it's going to come off. But you're going to have to remember, too, I let it dry for a good 15 to 20 minutes, you know, before I started tattooing. I know it's a lot of time, but, you know, if you're going to be doing a piece like this, it's kind of good to give it a little bit more time to dry and make sure it's going to stick really well. If you make that stuff that I make, it should work really well, and be really happy if you're going to be working off the stencil like this. But if you're outlining it and you're going to be doing just color, just say it's not a tattoo like this, but you're applying some of this to it, and you're going to outline, it might stick a little bit too well, and it might be a little frustrating, because when you're done with the tattoo, it might still show through. But I'd rather my stencil stick a little bit longer than not long enough, you know? So yeah, just using that back and forth motion, using a lot of periwinkle in this, using some purple and black right there on the edge, trying to make this clean, make them go together. Sometimes it's good to take a little bit extra time and, you know, make things come together a little bit cleaner, because, you know, I've done it where I don't take that extra time and both the tattoos look alright, but they just don't connect very well. You know, it's good, you know, 15 minutes, something like that, help you a lot. So I'm still fading it off. I think I use a little periwinkle and light blue mixed right here, and just kind of fading it off into the skin. Kind of making it roll into the forearm, and, you know, and then coming out to the outside of the arm to give a little bit more flow to the body. Just say he wants to go full sleeve, I can bring that bottom piece into and wrap around his form, bring a little bit of direction through those portraits and stuff. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of stick some periwinkle purple into the neck right here where I see a little bit of a shadow, a little bit of purple in there. So I'm going to bump that up and go ahead and get that in there. And that's why I have my shapes. That's why I stencil the way I do, you know. A lot of people tell me it's like color by number, which it kind of is, you know, it makes it a little bit more simple. But the less time I have to think about, you know, shape and things like that, the more time I have to think about, you know, exactly what color it is and where it's going. So that way I don't have to have too much in my mind. I can pay attention to less and kind of refine it a little bit more. So using some dark red and fading that off of that end. That's why I use the back and forth motion, because, you know, it kind of helps me on those parts where it's a little dark on, fades off on both sides. You know, I used to go straight across in the middle, and sometimes each side wouldn't fade off enough for me. So this has really helped me. Just kind of getting that neck, still going to the red. Looks like I'm gonna use some dark brown, dark red mixed again. I'll be using that a lot in this piece. A lot of that color's in there. Kind of cleaning up that edge on the back. Yeah, so just being patient with these pieces makes a world of difference, you know. You don't really want to rush through a piece like this. If you know your max time for sitting on a tattoo and you're over it in like 4 hours, then, you know, break it up in sessions, you know. Just take time to get through it, you know. You don't want to just knock something out as fast as you can and then be unhappy with it in the end. You want to take your time with it. So if it takes you 2 sessions to do it, it's fine. Just blocking the shapes. I usually do it all with color. I'll use line work sometimes in certain areas, like, you know, you'll see in a little while, you know, around lips, things like that. I'm still using the 17, you know, and the 15 mag. I'm using that. I'll use that most of the time for the big gradations of color. Helps me out, lets me go a little bit faster through it. Actually, the needle I'm using is a curved mag. It's a curved front. I like it a lot. It helps the colors fade from one to another also. But these needles are very hard to get. Like, I have to make them individually myself. I make all the needles. So it's a little bit extra time, you know, but it's worth it to me to make the needles. I can't get a needle or I haven't yet to find a needle that's pre-made that they make like this with the same type of needle. It's a long taper bug pen, so. Just getting this jaw in there. I'm using like a dark brown purple to get the dark in the jaw, some red in there. Just really paying attention to making sure I'm looking back at my reference a lot, you know, making sure that I'm really trying to follow what it's telling me and understanding what colors, not really looking at the whole thing, just looking at where I'm working and really paying attention to, you know, the darks and lights and the colors, and not looking at the whole thing and getting, you know, like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on, or it's a face. Just kind of looking at shapes and color, you know, and the value of it. You know, you don't want to get ahead of yourself and get overwhelmed. You just want to work in the area you're at, and, you know, make sure you're paying attention to that and not getting confused. So right here, I'm blocking in some hair with some black and purple again, and I use a lot of that, you know, a lot of the blacks first, and get those shapes in there and then kind of eyeball the rest. But if your stencils real well, you know, sometimes it stays there and helps you out, and you can get the shapes even better, and it's good, you know. And, you know, just say I'm doing this and I'm doing the hair and I'm getting, you know, confused and I make a strand in the wrong area. Like, I don't stress out, you know. You don't want to stress out. It doesn't need to be completely perfect, you know. It's just, you know, you're using it as a guide, you know. And it's better, the closer it is, the better. But, you know, you want to make it close enough. You don't want to stress out. You also want to have fun while you're doing these pieces, and, you know, the more you get stressed, the less fun it's going to be, and the more difficult you're going to give yourself. You know, just relax and have fun with it. You know, if you need to stand up for a second, stand up, put your machine down, take a break. You know, you don't want to just keep frustrating yourself. So everything doesn't need to be perfect. You know, you're just kind of trying to make as close as you can. So yeah, so I'm just fading it off. I went from black to purple and looks like to red, and that underneath the ear right there by the hair. Using more of a crimson red now. That's what I kind of see in there. It's gonna looks like it's gonna go to a little tangerine, more like bright red right there. So yeah, so I'll use like intense, some intense colors. I use a lot of eternal colors. Um, if this was a black and gray piece, I'd be using a lot of silverback ink. I really like those pre-made grays. Once in a while, if I'm doing a color piece like this, I'll use a little bit of the pre-made silverbacks in there, depending if I need to, stain a color or do something like that. But usually I pretty much stick to full color when I'm doing this. Yeah, so now I'm sticking a little bit of dark right there. I left a little gap because it was a little hair strand right there, a little thicker one. So I'll go underneath that shape, making sure I pay attention to where the light source is coming from, and going underneath that shape and doing some darks. I'll kind of work around my stencil. That way I have a little bit of gap in the skin. Sometimes if I'm not ready to put it there, it works real well for me. So yeah, I'm using probably a brown, black, maybe some plum. I tend to mix a lot of colors sometimes just looking. Right now it looks like I'm using a 5-round. And this is a pre-made 5-round. I used to use a lot of 3s, but for some reason now I run my machines, like even with the coil machine, these machines right here, the pneumatics, run really, really low. So a 5-round, makes like a 3-line, really, really clean and consistent if you set it up right. The same, I don't use liner machines really anymore. I use a lot of shading machines, real soft hit. I actually have a shading machine. It's a shader. It's what is it? A Bloodhound machine, and it runs really, really super soft. It barely pushes a mag, but it's just enough to push a 5. It really lets me build my lines up instead of having to make one line completely solid right away. So right here you're looking at me, I'm doing some dark red and purple over what I tattooed already. That machine's running so light that like it's not really doing any damage to the skin right there. I know it looks like I keep going over and over, but I seen this tattoo healed. It took about 2 weeks, but it healed really flawless. It still looks the same. It's been one pass. The guy heals really well. So yeah, I'm running my machines really light, just letting it get enough in there. And but yeah, it's just a solid. Nothing's lost. So yeah, I'm just cleaning it off right here. I'm using some soap and water mixed and just kind of cleaning that up. Putting a little bit of ointment down. Actually, looks like he's taking a little break. He should be coming to sit back down right away. He's in a little bit of pain. So yeah, it's just right here. It's me coming back right here, and I put a little bit of a line work on the side of the face sometimes to crispen up areas where I want it to be a little bit sharper. I'll use a color a little bit lighter than what. Just say there's black. Like there's definitely black right next to that face. I'll use a dark brown. For something like this, maybe a dark red with purple or blue into it. That way it isn't black, and that way the line's just not this crazy line when it heals if the black isn't as solid as the line. So that way the line heals up a little bit lighter, and it kind of, it isn't such a definite line there. So I'm just blocking in this hair, making sure I'm paying attention to the shapes and the direction the hair is going. I'll bring my mag sideways. That way I can kind of follow the shape of the hair and the way it's flowing out. This is black and purple mixed. Same thing, looks like purple and dark red right there as it comes out a little bit further and gets more into the light. I figured, you guys would want to see something with a lot of reds, a lot of things like that, a lot of warmth to it. A lot of times I have a lot of trouble with that, so I kind of wanted to see how it'd be done, and it's hard to create that warmth sometimes. So I'm cleaning it off, making sure not to wipe over my stencil too much to wipe it off. And still using some dark red and dark brown. So really paying attention, looking at my reference a lot, making sure I'm making the right choices on the color and the value. One thing, a little trick to do, if you're doing these color portraits and you're not sure if your value's right, and is once you're done, just say you get finished with it, take it into Photoshop and desaturate the picture and make it black and white after you did, the tattoo you did, and see if it still holds up shape. If it still holds up shape, then yeah, you're putting enough value. But if it falls flat, it's because you're not using enough value in the piece. So then next time, print out the same tattoo you did in black and white, and kind of draw above it with a pencil and get the reference and kind of see where you need to go darker. And that'll help your pieces hold up, and look more 3D. You're getting your full values in there. So right here I'm using a little bit of tangerine. It's a really good color. It's coming off the red. It's just really paying attention to the shapes right there. You can see how the lip is, and even though there's no stencil there, this is where drawing comes in. That's one thing I hate is on some inks, they get a little bit hard, so I'll have to take the hard little shell off. Sometimes what I do, if it gets too hard, or if I don't want it to do that, I'll put one drop of water on top of it, just to kind of keep it from hardening. So right here I'm using tangerine, and it looks like Georgia peach, and I'm kind of just coming off of that red and tangerine I just did and following the shape. I really like these colors. It creates a nice little flesh color. I use it a lot. So I'm just coming off with that Georgia peach and tangerine color. This looks like a little bit more Georgia peach than tangerine now. I'll dip half and half, and then just dip fully into the Georgia peach. This looks like a little bit of pink with the red, on the edge, getting a little bit lighter so that way that shape holds up on the edge. Rinsing my machine out in between. There's some gray there. I'll mix a lot of blue. I don't really like to use black and gray colors straight. I like to mix other colors into them. Gives them a little difference of a richness, not just black and white. Gives a little bit of life to the grays. So I mixed a little bit of blue. Right now I'm doing I did a little bit of, looked like periwinkle and maybe like a red. And just kind of sketching in that I don't know what color. Yeah, it looks, or blue and periwinkle it looked like. So it looks like a little bit of light magenta and blue to create a little bit of like a grayish purple. And just kind of following that shape where that makeup's coming down. And making sure I'm getting lighter where it needs to get lighter. Just having fun with it, not trying to be too perfect and too precise. Just trying to get the gist of what I see, and, rinsing my machine out. So yeah, the palette gets a little bit crazy, but I like it when it starts to get dirty. So I see a little bit of red there. I'll punch it up a little bit more, like off those grays, just to enhance it and have a little bit of fun with it. I'm not trying to look for exactly perfect. I mean, it would take forever if I wanted to get perfect. You do layers and kind of get it like that. I just want close enough value and a close enough color choice. Just kind of give the feeling of the picture. Right here I'm using a little bit of dark red. Kind of getting those shapes in there. You want to pay attention. That's not such. It's a little bit of a warmer area. It's hotter, so you're using those reds right there, and I'm using that tangerine and light red mixed. You don't want to go over too far. As you can see by the nose, if you look at the reference, it starts to get a little bit cooler in that shadowed area. Even though there's another hot spot with the light, it's still cooler than where the red's hitting. So I'm using that 5 round again. I'm using dark brown, outline the bottom of the lip. I like to outline it because it holds shape up over time. I'll use a lot of color line, help it hold up and look cleaner. I used to use my mag and just kind of drag it on the side, but I've noticed over time it kind of spreads out, doesn't hold up the same. You stick a couple colored lines in there in the sharper areas, and it really makes it a lot cleaner looking. Um, I mean, personally, I think the tattoo will hold up over time a little bit better just because it has those edges and it's so sharp. So I'm using a 5 round, still pre-made. The tube I'm using right now is also a next generation tube. I really like them. They got nice tips. I'm using a round tip. I used to use diamond tips, but I tend to like these round tips. So you can see me, I'm using looks like magenta and purple mixed. Now it looks like a crimson red and light red mixed. Just kind of outlining those lips, making them sharp. Make sure I'm paying attention. I mean, your stencil is important, but you also want to pay attention to the picture. And, if the stencil's a little off, you're going to have to draw that shape in. So making sure the lips are the right shape and things like that. You just don't want to just completely trust your stencil. It's there for guideline, and then you just kind of draw into it. And it's there to help you. But everything isn't always perfect. You just kind of want to look at it, eyeball it, use the reference a lot. That's what it's there for. You really want to pay attention to what's going on there. Sometimes things that used to help me before when I was first starting to do these, you buy a pack of Prismacolors and, make a stencil, with like a purple Prismacolor on a piece of paper and, draw on it with the colors, match the colors, try to match it the night before you're going to start a piece like this. That way you can at least see, if you can do it. Because if you can't do it on paper, you're not going to be able to do it on the skin. And that's kind of where you need to start, is the drawing part. So just try to mix your colors with the Prismacolors and, draw a color portrait on paper before you try to attempt it on someone's skin. It's really gonna help you a lot, and your color combinations you're gonna remember, and it's gonna make it turn out a better piece. Even if you're dealing with a black and white portrait, the night before you do it, and if it's your first ones, take the time, 2-3 hours, and kind of just go ahead and rough in some values with your pencils and try to draw that portrait. That'll give you an idea of what you need to work with, and then give you an idea if you're even able to do it or if you're ready. So right here I went from the tangerine and Georgia peach mixed into and those are eternal colors, and then I use for the lighter colors I use intense, and that's a flesh pot that I'm going into, and then into a flesh, and then into white usually. So right here I'm using a little bit of red, a little bit of water, and kind of fading it off black and grayish, like just kind of using that little bit of fade off. It looks like a little bit of tangerine and pink. So yeah, it looks like light magenta, tangerine, and maybe Georgia peach into that pinkish area. Just following shapes, making sure I see where that upper lip, like cheek area is. Ended. So it looks like light magenta and flesh in there. Kind of getting that pinkish color. I'll use a lot of flesh, to get things lighter. Sometimes I won't use as much white. If I use the flesh color, it tends to keep things a little bit, it lets things get lighter, but it doesn't let it get like the way white makes colors. So that way when I use my white highlights, it tends to keep my white highlights pretty true to white, I think it gives it a different life. So just getting those shapes in there, going over the lip right here. A little bit of flesh pot. I like this color. It's really pinky. It's like kind of peachy color. It's a really good color. And it's such a good transition from like Georgia peach to that, and then that into the regular flesh color. So I'll mix it down a lot depending on what it calls for. This one, calls for a lot of reds and pinks in it, but some pictures, you got to look for it. Sometimes they'll call for a lot of greens into those colors, things like that, blues, You really want to pay attention to what you're looking at, and really making sure you're following those colors that are there. So yeah, just bringing it up to the warm spots, the highlight spots. Make sure I'm getting lighter to where it looks like it's getting lighter on the picture. Right here I'm using 17 again on the lip, kind of just using the edge, sketching those darker colors in there. Making sure I'm not covering my highlight areas, you know, where they need to be, because those are important. Just kind of getting that tangerine in there. It's a good color off of red, so I suggest, you know, you get that color. It's a really good color. It's kind of hard to find a color like that that goes off of red, because red's a real hard color to use. So sometimes I'll make things a little darker, like right here, just in case I want it to pop a little bit more, add a little bit of value to it. You know, right here I'm using it's actually a 9 mag, but it fits in a 7 mag tube. It's a bug pin also. I make these myself too. Depending on what I need it for, I'll make them curved or straight. I actually like the straight ones a lot. On these, I don't really curve them. It's a smaller mag. I like to use the edges, you know. It makes a little sharper edge. I can line with them if I need to, if I don't need that clean of a line. Yeah, so I like them. It's a good needle. So right here I'm using some red and just kind of sketching in that lip, making sure I'm following those shapes and not changing the color too much. It looks like tangerine and that light red again. Cleaning out my machine. It must not have been right, dark enough. Use a little bit of a crimson red. Okay, so now it looks like I'm going to start using a round. Okay, so now I'll go in and put some lines to add a little bit of texture into the lips, you know. Following the shape also, making sure that the round lines I'm putting are curving with the shape of the lip. That way, you know, I'm not doing just lines wherever. They're actually moving with the way it's rounded. And then I'll sharpen things up, you know. I'll go in there and add a little bit dark underneath the lip and go a little bit darker. And the same thing, you know, I use my tattoo machine, like the coil machines, the same way. I've been using those, you know, a little bit more than I have been using the pneumatics. But I do switch back and forth, you know. Coil machines, you could do the same things with them and run them just as light, and you know, it's just a different tool. Like, they do different things, and it's always good to have a little bit more, a couple little things, you know, like different machines, and they all help. They all do different things, you know. They might teach you something, you know. I learned a lot off of these machines. So now I'm trying to use rotary machines, and those have been working really well, and just kind of testing things out and seeing what's going on, you know, seeing what's out there, seeing what they do, and maybe there's a purpose for them and things like that. So now what I do is I use my Aaron Kane for all my big shaded areas, and I'll either use a pneumatic, or if I'm on the road, I'll use a rotary machine. You know, I like the way they lay the lines in, really consistent. I can turn them down super low and feather my lines out and just kind of make it softer. So yeah, if you are looking to get, you know, the Numas or something like that, I suggest it. But if you're looking to get something close to that and close to the way they run, you know, I'd suggest a rotary machine. You know, they run really similar, and there's a bunch of brands out there. I'd really look. I'm not sure which ones. I've used a couple, but I'm not sure what I'm set on using. I'm still kind of feeling those out and seeing how those go. But yeah, so right here it looks like I'm using a little bit of grayish, like purple, brown, going a little bit darker under that nose. I usually like to go a little bit darker under the noses and a little bit darker around the noses sometimes, depending, because those shapes sometimes don't hold up really well. A lot of times I'll bump up the contrast around them in order to hold up the shape. And as you can see, I use a lot of line work around the nose. You know, it holds up the shape also on the edge of the nose, side of the nose, nostril. and then and then use my mag off of that to kind of hide that line. Like I said, I'll take the value it is, make it a little bit lighter, and then make that line, and then take the color that it is, make it a little bit darker, and then go right next to it, so that way the line don't stand out that much. But make sure I'm thinking about it. It's all about choices. You want to make choices and just be confident with them choices. Don't second guess it. Just kind of do it and then move on. Once it's there, it's there. There's not really much you can do until it heals. So just try not to get too frustrated and, just keep going. So right here, I'm just kind of making the shape right here above the lip. Make sure I'm paying attention to the way her face looks. And try not to go too dark, knowing that I'm going to go right next to it with a lighter color. And usually I'll get like on a, you kind of want to think about it. You want to think about, the colors you're using, and you get into a system, where it's like, you dip into this color and this to this color, and you kind of get to where you're using that consistently through the whole thing. You kind of want to remember that. You want to pay attention to what you're dipping in. If you're dipping into, like I am right here, I'm using a lot of tangerine and, the Georgia peach mix. You want to remember that combination. That way it's uniform through the piece. I mean, it may not be exactly perfect because it isn't a perfect mixture, but you want to know that that's what you've basically been using. A lot of reds, a lot of, but I have bases that I use. Like I use a lot of periwinkle. That's like my favorite color for these pieces. And it's pretty much a color you can use you could fade it into anything. It's good for any color. Works really well for your cooler areas. So right here, I'm just using some more Georgia peach. Looks like some light flesh, some white. Need a quick transition. Making sure your machine's rinsed out really well. If your machine's not rinsed out really well, sometimes, you'll be tattooing and, the color you used will mix right into it and it's not the color you wanted. You can see I'm using a lot more water right here with my ink. Just kind of fade it off. That way when I get the color over it, just kind of just blends right into it. Really paying attention, looking at the picture a lot. You don't want to go too long without looking at your reference. It's really important you keep looking at it. That's what it's there for. You want to keep paying attention to what's going on. So just have fun with it. It's really fun when you get a piece like this where you got to do the photography for it, and you got to play around with their makeup or whatever. You get to kind of get the idea of where the piece is going to go on the body. The look the person's going to have, and it's really good. It's really good if you can talk your customers into stuff like that, and you're able to get a picture yourself, because then you can get the dark areas where you want them and get more value and kind of play around. It's your idea all the way through from the beginning to end. It's not just this picture someone brought in. You had fun with it. So if you ever get a chance to do that, you really should take advantage of it. So right, it looks like I'm using a little bit of pink, like a peach. So a little bit of, and like I said, I run my machine really light. So, just say a value or something looks funny to me, and I need to darken something up. Well, I haven't ran my machine too crazy hard. So I'll kind of turn my machine down a little bit lower, just say it's a darker color I need. I'll make that darker color and then kind of hit that area real light, back and forth motion, fading it in and out. You don't want to just bury it into the skin. If the skin's been hit, you're going to chew it up. You want to just kind of barely touch it and gradually hit it, I use a lot of ointment in the areas. I'm not tattooing. Kind of helps my hand move around, and, right here I'm going to do some more black and purple. If you're wondering, like, where I'm running this pneumatic machine, like what PSI I'm using, right here I'm probably using about 25 to maybe 30, or maybe like 27 PSI. It runs real good like that. It's a good consistent, feeling to me. There's my needles for the pneumatics are really shallow. Right here I'm probably putting my needle out maybe, I don't know, a nickel's worth. Where with like, a coil machine, I'd be putting out a little bit further than that because I know it's going to back off. Like I said, one of my favorite machines is an Aaron Kane. So just say I was using my Aaron Kane on this, I'd probably be running my Aaron Kane pretty soft to the hit. It'd run consistent, but when I touch the skin, it kind of bogged down. It wouldn't turn off, but it'd bog down and be consistent still. So it just depends. I mean, I could give you volts and things like, or like, the speed and stuff like that, but all machines are different. So I don't know. I would say my Aaron Kane itself, I would be running it around maybe 8 volts, 9 volts, somewhere around there. But then like my Bloodhound liner, I'd probably be running it like at 4 volts, but the machine runs when it's super light. So it'd be running super, super soft. But it's still running consistent. You know what I mean? It still has its sound. It's still holding up. It's, it's like harmony, So yeah, so either way, you're going to be able to get this result. So yeah, I'm just kind of outlining the little strands of hair, making sure I leave gaps for the little highlights. You can see right there as I'm bringing that black line, I'm not bringing it all the way through because I'm going to stick some color above that to show a little bit of light source, a little bit of shape there. And then I'll just kind of run some fast lines sometimes, just kind of have fun, not be so stressed, just run a couple little red lines there, just kind of give you the idea of what's going on there, not trying to be so perfect, giving the guy time to rest, move his arm right there, kind of explaining to him what's going on, letting him know where I'm at. So yeah, so now I'm just kind of working around the nose. And yeah, don't stress like if your stencil, is kind of fading off. Just make sure, you got the major points like the eyes or things like that aren't completely losing itself, because, that's when it gets scary. You don't want to wipe into those areas too much. You lose that stencil, then you're going to have a little bit of trouble getting that lined up again or, drawn on there right. It's going to be a little rough, a little stressful. So yeah, I'm using a little bit of periwinkle right here in the background, kind of fading off, finding that shape. Now I'm using probably a little bit of brown, gray into the makeup. Make sure I'm paying attention to the way the shape is underneath the eye there. A little bit of purple and black, it looks like right here. So yeah, dark brown, light brown mixed right here, it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and get into that little shadow area off of the red. Use a little bit of brown and purple. Just kind of sketch those shapes in there. Like I said, I don't go real solid right away. I want to make sure that I'm building it up, It takes a little more time, but the end result seems to come out a little bit more solid, So right here I'm using so on the one side I used dark red. I used, like crimson, and then lighter red, tangerine, Georgia peach, flesh pot and flesh, and white. Okay, now I'm going into like an area that I'm going to make a little bit cooler because you want that contrast even if it isn't there. I'm using a little bit of dark brown, light brown, and then I'm using another color from Eternal. It's called Flesh Tone. It's a great color. I use it for my cooler areas. I'll use that for my browns. And you can see it. It's more of like a brownish, like purple color. I'll use that with like purples and things like that in order to create my light shadows. And I'm using that together with, and then I'll go into like my regular flesh from that color into white. You know what I mean? Depending how light it gets and how much I need to put in there, depending on how light. So yeah, right here I'm using tangerine, making sure I pay attention not to cover that little highlight on the nose. There was a little dot there, and that's really what's going to hold up shape on that nose and make it look 3D. So you want to make sure not to cover that. I kind of went around it. I'm using my 9 mag and just kind of sketching in that nose and making sure I'm following the shapes that I see there. So you just got to be mindful of what you're doing and not rush it and really keep looking at your reference. So it looks like I'm using a lot of flesh tone right now. It's a good color to mix with purple a lot. Blues, pinks, things like that sometimes. So you can see I darkened up the edge of the nose right there. Sometimes I'll do that in order to create a little bit more contrast, a little bit where the two lights meet. Just depending on what I feel. Everything's about choices. You want to make choices, and just keep moving on. Sometimes you'll wonder, oh, did I make that too dark, or it's too dark or too light? Just kind of move on, man. Don't worry about it. Just get it done, and in the end, then you can see what it looks like as a whole. Sometimes things look weird when they're not completely finished. So you just want to keep going on. As long as it's close enough to your reference, then you're good. People aren't going to really look at things like that. Your reference isn't always going to be there. People are going to look at the eyes, make sure the eyes are looking straight, make sure they're not cross-eyed. They're going to be looking at the shape of the nose, the lips, things like that, They're never really going to pay attention too much if the value is slightly off. But it is very important. So just working on this cheek, bringing that dark red around there and tangerine. Make sure I'm paying attention to the way the cheek rolls around, and, make sure I'm getting lighter too as I get closer to the nose, making sure I'm not making the value of the nose and the cheek the same. Even though it looks like that in the picture, sometimes it's better if you kind of change things like that, just so that way, it holds a little bit more 3D element to it. You can play around. You're not only copying this thing, you're drawing it too, so you can make any changes you think are important. So yeah, I'm just using like a tangerine and creamsicle color right there, or Georgia peach. And just kind of working with that. Now I'm going to sketch some hair in just real quick, just following the shape, making sure I'm not being too perfect on it, just kind of getting it in there and having fun, just not being too stressed on being perfectly precise. As long as you get some of the direction and the shape there, you'll be fine. I'm sure this guy's pretty sore by now. It's probably been about 4 hours into the tattoo, 5 hours into the tattoo, something like that. Remember, this is sped up, so it takes a little, it's a pretty long tattoo. All right, so right here I'm using the 5 round, and I'm doing the bottom of the lid black. I'm using like black and purple mixed and doing the bottom eyelid. Make sure I'm paying attention that it rolls around that eyeball and that, I'm following that shape. The same thing on the top lid, rolling around. The machine's running so light, I really don't make one straight line. I'll use a back and forth motion, circle motion, something like that. And I'm just making those lines right there. Kind of getting them in, trying to get them in there before, the stencil wipes away on me. And, this is where the stencil starts to go away. So you kind of just start needing working a little bit faster. But, that's where the drawing part comes in. Just in case your stencil wipes away, you know where to draw on these things and make it look right. That's why I say it's good to practice before, you do the tattoo, if these are some of your first ones. Yeah, so purple and black, I'm going to, do that little circle inside of the eye and kind of fill it in. Making sure my machine's running real light, that way I can just kind of build it up in there. Get a little bit of red and kind of show the shape of that nose right there where the bridge is. Yeah, making sure I'm paying attention to the way the eye's round on the edge right there. You can see me kind of sculpting it out with the needle and making it round. So I'm filling in the bottom lid right now, and it looks like black and purple. More black, it looks like. I use a lot of triple black. I like that color a lot. It's really dark. I'm doing the top of the eyelid right there. It's a dark area, so I'll use, a lot of black, a lot of purple, a lot of dark red. Things like that in there. 5 round works really well. It makes it really sharp depending on, how big the portrait is. I mean, if the portrait was any smaller, I'd be using a 3 round. But, it's a pretty big portrait. The eyes are pretty big. It lets me get away with using a 5. be a little bit cleaner. And plus, my machine's running real light, like I said, so the 5's not really laying like a super thick 5 line in. It's, you know. So, okay, right here on the eye, okay, just say I use black. And now on the inside, where it starts to get to the pupil, I'll use like, you know, purple, and then I'll go to, you know, red, and then or brown, or whatever the eye color is, and then I'll go to the lighter color. Right now, I'm just kind of blocking them in there. As you can see, the stencil's starting to wipe away. It's been hours. So yeah, I'm just kind of trying to get those shapes in there, so that way I don't lose them. You know, it's really important that the eyes are in the right area. So I'm going in there, and you can see like the eyelids are thick, so I'm making them thick. You know, I'm following the how thick the eyelids look, and paying attention to where the highlights are and the darks are. So I'm just outlining my darks, doing what I see there. You know, everyone's going to see things a little bit different. So, you know, two people could do the same pieces and it's never going to look the same. So you just got to make your choice. That's where it comes in, all your choices, and being confident with your choices. You know, and drawing, like I said, you know, drawing these pieces before you attempt to do them. It's important, you know, really taking the time out. That's what's going to set people apart, is taking the time out to draw these pieces beforehand, because then you'll have more of an understanding. You know, you can do it. And then if you made any mistakes, or if you didn't like something you did, then, you know, you can change that when you tattoo it, and then you don't make those mistakes. Yeah, so I'm just kind of getting those real dark areas in, fading it off, and just kind of getting those shapes in there, making sure the eyes are looking at you, making sure they're not cross-eyed. See, even right now, though, like if they were a little cross-eyed, then I could take a little bit of black or a little bit of purple and kind of adjust them, you know, not really trip out on how perfect it is. You can always adjust. So right here, there was a little highlight. There, if you look in the picture close enough, there's a highlight right there, a little tangerine highlight it was from the red light that was glistening pretty well in her eyes. So I'll go in there and I'll knock those in there, since they're not white. And then it looks like there was a little blue highlight in there. So then I'll go and knock that in there. So that way that stencil and that where it sits exactly isn't gone. Okay, so now I'm taking like a dark red and running it right next to the eyelid, right underneath it. So that way it's not such a hard, bold, heavy line. It kind of softens up. It's a value a little bit lighter than the black, and it's just kind of right there on that edge. It'll kind of soften up that edge, not make it so crisp, and kind of make it more believable, more real. Not so graphic like black, you know. Yeah, so now I'm using my mag again. I'm kind of going through and following that shape of that bottom of the eye. Really paying attention to where my darks are. Really paying attention not to go out too far. And just taking my time, you know. Patience counts for a lot, you know, when you're doing a piece like this. Well, in anything, patience, you know, counts for a lot. So you're really trying not to rush through it, trying to pay attention to what you're doing, and just going at your speed. If you're fast, you're fast. If you're slow, you're slow. Just, you know, be confident with your choices. You know, if it starts to get too dirty, like right there, like I started to see too much, you know, stuff all over. I couldn't see the whole piece. I clean it off, you know, and then I look at it. Right here, it looks like I'm using some Bactine. He must be a little sore, so I'll go ahead and lay out some Bactine, and it'll kind of help him out with this soreness. Bactine's a great thing. You can find it at like Walmart or, you know, Walgreens, Target, wherever like that, and it works really well. You know, spray it. You don't want to get it on the stencil. The stencil will wipe away. You just get it in the opened areas, you know. It'll help your customer out and give them that extra edge of sitting a little longer. Yeah, so I'm using a little bit of periwinkle. Okay, so now we're getting to a cooler area of the face. Okay, right here where the makeup is. You can see a lot of blues, a lot of purples. I'll enhance those, you know. If I see a little bit, sometimes I'll bump it up. You know, try not to change the value too much, but sometimes, you know, I do. Barely a hair. You don't ever want to go too far off. So right here I'm using a little bit of purple, a little bit of brown. And just kind of knock it in those areas around the socket of the eye. Making sure that you're thinking about things. You know, when you're doing a piece like this, you really want to think about shapes, you know, and what it's made of. You know, not only the stencil and not only like, you know, what the face is like, knowing that there's, you know, that there's bone underneath and that there's muscle structure and bone structure, and that you're really working into the socket of the eye, and that's why the eye is sitting like that, and thinking deeper than what's just there. Not just following exactly what's there, but really thinking about what's going on, and what things are made of. And and then that comes up with other things, and especially with like the color choices too, like making sure you're is that a shadow or isn't that a shadow? Is there light hitting there? Is there not light hitting there? What color is this light? Things like that. You really want to think about it. You don't want to just do it because it's there. You want to make sure you understand why it's there or what's going on. And that's really important. That's going to help you evolve. It's going to come up with more questions, and then you're going to come up with more answers. And if you don't know the answer, then you ask somebody. Hey, why is this like this? Or and usually, people will give you the answer that they have. If they don't know how to answer it, they won't. But it's important to keep asking questions. It'll make you grow. So I'm really following the cheekbone right here above, and really paying attention to those shapes that are on the face, and still using that back and forth motion. Going right into what I did a little while ago, using a couple little dark colors. So it looks like I'm going to use some bright red right now and go right off into that cheek. You can see that cheekbone, just the way it rolls around right there, and really paying attention. So you want to use that and really know what's there. And that's what's going to hold up the shape of the face, if it looks right, if it looks wrong. So I'm rinsing my machine out a little bit. Cleaning this off. I don't know what he was telling me. He's probably telling me how to do my job. But it's all right. Yeah, so I use a little bit of light brown, purple for this side of the face. Remember I was talking about that earlier. I'll use it, I'll purposely make this side a little bit cooler than the other side. Just to add that little bit of contrast. And not really use the same colors. I want to change up the colors, So right here on the cheek, it's a little bit warmer. Still using that Georgia peach and tangerine color. And like right here, like you can see where the top cheekbone and the jaw is, I'm breaking that in half. Right there. How it falls in. And even though that shapes there a little bit, sometimes I'll knock it up a little bit more. And just following that shape there. Lightening it up as I go. You could actually see it in the picture a little bit more than you can see it on the way it's videotaped right now. There's a major glare right there, so you really can't see that little cheekbone that was sitting there, but it was there, and I might have enhanced it a little bit. But yeah, still going off of it, See, sometimes it isn't the right color. It wasn't, light enough. So now I'm going in and had to change the color a little bit. Still using that back and forth motion and circles. Just when I want to get it solid, if I know it's the right color, it's the right shape, go from there, Not being afraid to dip, not being afraid to play with my color. Really trying to look for that color. So yeah, right here it was mixed, a little bit of flesh pot and a little bit of flesh. Going into that, making that solid. Bringing it out to my highlights, where the white is. So you can see the shape of the cheek, the shape of the jaw there. Really thinking about these things, So a little bit of white, a little bit of flesh. Going underneath that gradually, just taking my time, making it slowly transition into each other. It's not real rushed, real rough. Want to take your time. And throwing a little bit of white on the bottom of that jaw. Make it contrast against that shadow that's underneath it. Just looking at the reference, you know. So right here it looks like I'm probably using almost straight white now, with a little bit of flesh. Like if I would have rinsed almost all my flesh out and then just went into the white, you know. Clean rinse cup too, you know. You want to think about that, you know. Like right now my rinse cups are pretty dirty. It'd probably help me out if I would have changed them out a little bit. But sometimes, you know, if, you know, your colors aren't coming out true no more, it's because your rinse cups, you know, go get some new rinse cups, throw those ones away and put some new ones out. So right here, okay, the stencil's starting to wipe away. I need to block things in. So I'll go in there with my darks and I'll just start knocking in the hair, following the shape. You know, like I said, things don't got to be perfect. You can eyeball it. It's not like someone's going to look at it and be like, this strand isn't right or anything like that. Just got to go in there and have fun and just kind of get that stuff in there, you know. Sometimes a stencil won't last forever. You know, you've been wiping this thing for, you know, 4 or 5 hours, depending on how long you're going, and it just starts to wipe away. And that's where you got to be comfortable with drawing it and just kind of getting it in there. And that's why I say it's important for you to draw these pieces in order for you to understand and to gain confidence, you know, because then you're not going to stress out. You're not going to freak out. You know, just say you're having trouble with color, you know, and you're not sure like what colors to use or what's warm, what's cool, you know. It's important, you know, go buy a color wheel, play with it, you know, read it and, you know, or take a little class, you know, on color just to kind of teach you a little bit. Or ask somebody that you know that knows about it. You know, it'll help you a lot with these pieces too. So just outlining this, it looks like I'm using like a black up here. It looked like I used some dark red. Just following the shape. You know, these are quick lines. These are going to be covered with my mag. So it's not anything really crazy. Just kind of sketching them in, you know. And right here, this is what I use, a little 5, and I'll just kind of sketch in those eyebrows. You know, just kind of follow that shape. You know, it looks like I'm using probably like a purple and a black, maybe some dark red. Just following those shapes, making it real simple, not too crazy, you know. You know, not trying to make every hair, everything perfect, just kind of getting it in there, get the idea there, and that's it. Move on. You don't want to sit there and think too much, just kind of want to do it and move on. So yeah, just kind of sketching these lines in there. So I don't want to lose these shapes or lose the direction of the hair. You know, a lot of that stuff's important. So yeah, just playing with it. Now I can wipe it all down and clean it off, you know, not really worry about what I'm going to lose, you know, because the rest of it I'll just eyeball. You can see it a little bit there, but, you know, but everything's there, you know, where the eyebrow is. I know where to go off of the color now. And, you know, that's another thing is be careful with, you know, on how hard your ink, you know, gets on top. Sometimes you can tend to bend your needles, you know, if you hit it too hard and if it's dried up. Make sure you're paying attention to take those hard pieces off. So right here in the temple, I had seen a little bit of blue. So, you know, I kind of bumped it up, kind of laid out some blue. This guy's starting to get pretty sore. You know, it's probably pretty deep into the session. So I'll just lay it out, you know, just say I need a second pass and I'll go through it. So I'll use that blue and then I'll take that brown right next to it. You know, it depends on what I see in the picture. But yeah, that's what I see. So that's what I did. And I'll bump it up, you know. I have fun with it, like I said before. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be close and kind of get the idea and feeling of the piece and get it down, you know. So using some dark brown here into the eyebrow and off of the right there, off of the around the eye. And just kind of fading it into that periwinkle purple that I laid down earlier. Now I'm just kind of, you know, the guy's pretty sore, so I'm going to kind of get him in there and get it done. And so I'm just kind of going through and sketching in the forehead and using that back and forth motion into the brown. Running my machine super light, building it, you know. So, I'll use a lot of like, sometimes I'll cross hatch like I just did right there, side to side, and then I'll go up and down. So then I'm going right here, I'm creating this shadow here using the purple. It looks like a light purple and blue. And then just kind of laying that out. And then it's in some periwinkle, And maybe it's a little bit lighter than it should have been, but maybe not. Maybe pretty close. But it's all right. As I work more on this, I look at the shapes and stuff, but you also want to pay attention to that brow bone, that's going on right there above her forehead. Making sure you're following that and making sure it's the right shape there. Like I was saying earlier, you want to think about what's underneath and what it's made up of. And sometimes things are made too smooth, or too like flat. It just kind of falls flat and doesn't look right. So right there, I see a little, like all my stencil's gone. I need to knock in where that highlight is. So I'll just take my mag like that and kind of go right around where the highlight is, so that way I don't lose it. And then I'll fade all the colors into that. So see, that's like if I was gonna do 2 sessions, the whole tattoo would look like the way that forehead is. I'd knock it all in like that, and then I'd let it heal, and then they'd come back, and then I'd just do the rest. Well, since this is a 1 session tattoo, it's pretty much all finished. But the stencil's wiping away, so I knock it in there real quick, and then it allows me to put some Bactine or whatever it is to help him out, and lets him get through the session a little bit longer, lets him sit there a little longer and take a little bit more of the pain, I'm also always concerned with the comfort of the customer. You always want to make sure they're all right, that they're comfortable, make sure that they're feeling good. If they need water, things like that. It's going to help them get through a session like this, if you're looking to do really long sessions. The kind of music you're playing, things like that. If you're listening to some aggressive music, it might make them feel uncomfortable. A lot of times I'll let my customer listen to some comfortable music. That way they can, whatever they choose, or, kind of help them out like that. Or, compromise, do some of my music, some of their music. But, that way they're comfortable. It's going to help you. So right here I'm using some looks like some purple and some brown, and just kind of getting in around that eye. So that I think that purple, that light purple, is actually grape. Let me see. Yeah, it is. It's like grape from Intense. So I'm using looks like that. I'm not sure exactly what colors that was. It was creamsicle or Georgia peach, I think, and like light magenta. So right here I'm using like some dark brown, just kind of getting in that shape of that eye. Using some periwinkle in there, maybe some gray with that. Making sure I'm paying attention to my reference still. Like if you use purple and light blue, sometimes it makes this really cool, like weird light purple. I use it a lot. It's a nice color. So then I'll darken things up. Like I said earlier, if something isn't dark enough and I haven't hit the skin that much, then I'll go in there and darken it after, kind of hit it real quick, real light, back and forth motion, just kind of go into it. Some of you are probably wondering, I'm doing some black here and I'm wiping right into those light colors. I've been running my machines pretty light the whole time. So, it's not like it's like crazy traumatized and got like a bunch of, crazy holes there. So I'm wiping into it, and it's not wiping into the skin because it's not real. It's still pretty like, what do you call it? Sealed. It's not like all these crazy open holes, I'm running my machines real light, so it's not really wiping into it. I noticed the more I work the skin and the more I damage it, the easier it is for me to wipe those colors into it. You just want to run your machines light and kind of get through it. You're going to have more trouble if You know, you might run the machines too hard. This is just my own thing, you know. This is kind of, I don't know if it's true that I'm just running it too light and, you know, it's not wiping in, but that's just kind of what I've noticed on doing this. So I'm using the reds and on the same sides again. And, you know, just say I mudded up a color too much and I'm not liking the color too much of what I've made because I've dipped in it too much and used so many different colors. I'll put it out again, you know, I'll put another cap out and I'll put it out again. A lot of times I did it and in the end result, I wasn't happy with it. The color was a little muddy. It didn't stay consistent. You know, take the time, you know, take your gloves off and put that color out. Or, you know, I'll put a couple of those colors out and one's just to get muddy and then the other one's just to keep clean and the other one's just for warm and the other one's just for cool. It just depends, you know, on what I'm feeling. But it's always good to put, if you know you're going to use that color a lot, put a multiples out. That way you can keep one clean. So here I'm using that tangerine. I use that a lot in here. Using this 9 mag again, running it pretty soft, that back and forth motion. You know, fading it off into that other stuff. Really helped me that I put that highlight there because it probably would have been a little off if I wouldn't have laid it out before the stencil was gone. So using a little bit of Bactine, helping this guy out a little bit, trying to get through this session. Rinsing my machines out. That's really important. You want to make sure you rinse all that out. So I'm looking at flesh tone. I'm using that flesh tone from Eternal on the edge of that nose right there. Flesh tone, purple, and it looks like Georgia Peach together. Giving me that light little purple color that I needed. Real soft. Following the shape of that nostril. You know, using that back and forth motion over some of the stuff that I had already hit real light. See, real skimming the skin real quick, you know, nothing real crazy, just soft. So it gets hard. Take it off. This looks like it's a flesh pot mixed with the same colors I had. I didn't rinse my machine all the way out. That way it goes into it smoothly. Making sure I'm paying attention still to the reference. I haven't stuck hardly any white in this straight, so like I said, I'll usually wait for that. You know, rinse my machines out really well, and then do that white at the very end. Still getting the shape of the eyes in here. Just taking my time, you know, making things right, making sure things are right. So just putting that light red is, you know, you got to think about that too. Like the light's coming from the bottom right there. That's going to hit the bottom of the lids. It's going to get darker on the cheek right there on the top and then come back around down and get lighter. So you just want to pay attention to that. Even though the picture's there, just say the picture doesn't have much value, you have to add a little bit more, then it's important to know those things and think about it. Not just follow exactly what you're doing. So right here I'm going with the liner again. After I shaded over a little bit, using a little bit of black and purple, making those eyebrows a little bit darker, a little bit more defined. Kind of following the direction of the way they're going, you know. You want to follow those lines in the right direction. Right here it looks like I needed a little bit darker edge, so I'll go through it and kind of make it a little bit darker. You know, using my 5 round a lot, making sure it's running really light like a shader. That way I can use it for details like that and just kind of shade with it really quick. Just clean it off really good with Bactine. Letting it sit there on him. You know, kind of let it soak into the skin. It'll kind of help him with the soreness. You know, let him sit a little bit longer. Using a little bit of blue and white. And probably the side of the nose right there, I see a little bit of blue. So trying to get that color close. You know, make sure I'm getting lighter with the value. kind of see it in a couple spots. So I'll move that color around, put it a couple different places. You know, if I see it a little bit, I'll just throw it in there, even though it's a little bit more enhanced. And just say I don't like it, then I let it heal and I go back through it. You know what I mean? I lighten it up a little bit more, knock it down. You know, it's not that crazy. If you can get a second sitting on it, it's perfect. Let you adjust some things that you maybe weren't sure of, you know. But at least it's in there and you made a decision, you know. So just kind of finishing up that cheekbone, cheek area. Using some flesh pot, it looks like, and some Georgia peach. And a little bit of blue. You know, I see it transition a little bit. Getting that temple area in there. And lighting up as I come up to the hottest spots on that side of the face where it needs white. Now you can see I put multiple whites out. That way I can mix some flesh tone into one, some blue into one. You know, if the same one I'd use blue and I'd use purple, you know, other colors like that. But making sure I have at least one pure white out just in case I need to put it out. You know, it's going to keep it more clean. And right here using some more Bactine. You know, I'll use it a lot throughout the whole tattoo. It's got a little bit of lidocaine in it. It helps the tattoo out a little bit, numbs it up. So you can see it up close. It's a little bit of brown. Getting this area in there, a little bit of purple. Looks like I needed to darken it up a little bit, so I'm going through and kind of just darkening it up. I had a lot of fun on this piece. This piece was really cool to do. It was different than a lot of pieces I end up doing. You know, a lot of the reds and stuff like that. It was interesting. You know, it was a little bigger than I usually get to do the face. So I got to have a little bit more fun with the eyes and a little more detail than you know, I'm able to put sometimes. So I'm using some dark brown, just kind of getting in the forehead. This guy's probably starting to hurt, so I'm probably starting to move a little bit faster, trying to get him done, you know. That's always something with tattooing, you know. I mean, the client is also, it's not like you could just sit there and, you know, you draw on it as long as you wanted to. I mean, you're kind of pressured because, you know, if the client's in too much pain or they can't handle it, then you're not able to sit there as long as you like. So, you know, sometimes you kind of got to get through some areas and get it fast and get the shapes in there real fast and then wait for your second session, you know, and then adjust what you need to adjust. Well, that's what makes it kind of great, you know. You're on this time limit and you are pressured, and kind of makes it what it is, you know. So just kind of lightening up in the values where I'm going, kind of moving kind of faster, you know, trying to get through these areas, but still following the shape, you know, still paying attention to what's going on, still paying attention to, you know, the values and where my highlights are. Okay, so now I'm softening up that place where I went to earlier and using like a little bit of a tangerine and, you know, maybe flesh pot. Lining up right there, you know, you can see how it changed. You know, I didn't hit it real hard, so it was easy to go ahead and go through and soften up. So little by little, you know, this piece is coming together, and like I said before, I think this piece was like something like 7-8 hours long, somewhere around there. One sitting, and just taking my time with it. Just kind of following the way that brow bone is. That's why I made that little shape right there. You can see it in the picture. And there was times before I used to smooth that out, but the forehead would come flat, and it's good to make sure you're paying attention to that, to the way those shapes are. It's going to add a different look to your piece, and it's going to help it a lot. And then the piece next to it, you see kind of quick glimpses of it. That's one pass also, that's one pass with a coil machine. And, I'm pretty happy with it. Probably needs a little bit more work, but you can see there's hardly any difference. The reference wasn't as good. Obviously it was off the internet. But it was, you could do the same things with your regular magnetic coil machines. I love them. Like I said before, I still use them. So right here on the eye, I'm going from the darkest to the lightest inside towards the pupil. I'm probably using a dark purple, and then I go into brown. I'm making sure not to go into those highlights that I laid out earlier. Remember I was telling you I put that blue and that tangerine color in there. Really paying attention to not to hit those, because those are going to give it a little bit more life, a little bit more understanding of what's going on around it. If you're not sure sometimes, what color your shadows are, look in the background. A lot of times your background, make up the shadows in your foreground. You got to make it believable, and what's going on around you. You're made up of all the colors around you. So you really want to pay attention to that with your reference. Looking more into it than just the foreground or just a picture of the person's face. The color around it's really going to make it what it is, If you're next to a green wall, your face is probably going to be a little bit greener. If you're next to a blue wall, there's going to be a little bit more blue in the face. And usually it's in your shadows. It's a lot in the shadows. That's at least just what I've noticed, with looking at pictures all the time. So yeah, I'll take lines right up to the next to the black of the eyes, like I am right now, and using magenta red, into it. And I'm really, really having fun with these eyes, really just running my machine super slow and building up those eyeballs, so that way I can shade with it. That way it isn't just a line. It's like a soft hit, and I'm shading with it, So now the eyes are starting to come to life, starting to have some fun, doing a little bit of purple, doing a little bit right underneath that eyeball, and between the lid and the eye. Little bit of blue. I use a lot of this blue. One side of the eye is a little bit cooler than the other, so I make sure to pay attention to that. There's a little bit more blue on the left side of the eye than there is on the right. I don't want to use any blue, so I go through. I kind of hit it real quick, real soft. Hit both sides of the eyes. You can see it, and then on the opposite side of the eye, on the right side, I'll use probably a little bit of magenta. Kind of fade that off, because that's where the red light's hitting. As you can see, it's changing the way that the look of the face is. It's making those eyes more believable. And kind of bringing the colors that are around it on the skin into it too. So just kind of going in and adjusting things that I see that should be adjusted, and cleaning things off, seeing what it looks like after I get things in there. I haven't done no highlights in it. You see I left the little spot on the nose, side of the nose. There's still spots in the eyes that need white highlights. I haven't done them yet. I'll do those at the very end. So now I'm just going to go through and start knocking the hair in, Start doing this dark brown and dark red and getting all those shapes in there, Yeah, still following the flow of the hair and making sure I'm paying attention to that. Hair's a hard thing, I still have a lot of trouble with hair. A lot of it's just taking the time and paying attention to it. But it is a hard thing. A lot of people don't want to take the time to make it look right, and I I fall in that category too. You know, sometimes I just can't sit there and make the hair look perfect. It's just too much work sometimes, but it really counts for a lot if you can. It'll look really good. So yeah, just getting these lighter like browns in there, and reds, and just kind of following what I see there and paying attention to what's going on. And yeah, so using a little bit more Bactine just to help him out. Kind of, has lidocaine in it, help it numb up a little bit, take that edge off, gives me a few more minutes just to, work on him. Just going back through and putting that red where it needs to be, and using more just a straight dark red instead of so much purple into it. And, I already laid out a lot of the darks, and still following that shape and the way the hair is flowing, coming off the tips of those little corners where the skin's showing through. Yeah, just still following that shape, working on it. I'm going to be working on the hair for a little bit, kind of doing the same thing. Like I said, drawing, it all comes from drawing. So you really need to sit down and mess with colored pencils before you attempt these things. Really play around with the colors and kind of see, maybe pick some colors that are close to the colors that you use in your tattoos, and just kind of mix them up, see what they do. A lot of times, if I'm looking for a color in a piece like this before I start, I'll kind of put one drop on one finger of the glove and then one drop on my thumb and mix them together and see what the color looks like before I even mix it in my tube before I do the tattoo, just because it'll give me an idea of what those two colors are going to make. Really break down the piece, and really study the colors up close. Another thing I'll do is I'll take the reference photo and just kind of look at it for a good couple minutes, 5 minutes, and just kind of stare around. Don't look at it as a face, kind of stare around and look at what colors there is. Right here I'm blocking in the background of behind the hair, and you could see it in the picture. It's a little blue. And I'll go in there and I'll punch it up a little bit more blue. You'll see in a little bit when I get more into it that I'll stick a little bit brighter blue back there just to make it enhance. It'll be more like the brighter blue that I stuck in the face. I kind of like to choose the pictures, like the colors that's in the picture, just so that way I can bring my foreground and background together. It's good to bring that together. It's going to tell the right story. It's going to make it believable. So I'm working up here near the armpit, kind of fading off the hair and sticking some black and purple here, and just kind of following that shape again. I probably won't go up that high. I don't want to go up that high. I'll just kind of fade it off. But yeah, these are pretty quick areas. I'll just kind of go in there and put the idea of what I see and fade it off, still using that back and forth motion. I've learned a lot of little things just over the years of doing these. I've done a few, and like the line work we were talking about earlier, and I use a lot more than I used to, and it really helps hold up over time, and just really helps it look a lot more sharper and crisper and cleaner than just using the edge of the mag. I'll use the edge of the mag for places like this, like the hair, just to give a softer edge, and kind of fade it off. It kind of blurs it out a little bit and doesn't make it look as sharp. But then in the areas where I want it to be sharper, I'll take that liner and just kind of cut that color through, and then I'll, if it really needs to be sharp, then I'll cut the colors right next to it and just shade with my liner and make it real sharp area. So on this side of the hair, it's a little bit cooler, so I'm using a little bit more periwinkle, a little bit more purples on that side where it falls into the other color, into the other light source. Just contrasting, the two sides. Right here I'm just blocking it up on the top. I probably won't end up going up too much higher. I'm just going to kind of fade it off. But, I play with the background. I play with these things, just kind of fade it off, make it look smooth and clean, just make it work with the area. Like I said, everything doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of have fun. Most people aren't going to look at that area anyways, It's good to keep it clean, but they're going to look at the eyes and nose and lips and things like that. So it's good to pay attention to the detail in there a lot of times. So yeah, I mean, the more you do, the better you're gonna get at them. The more you draw, the better you're gonna get at them. So if you have the chance to do them, take it, do it. Just make sure that it's a time to do it. Don't jump ahead of yourself. I did a bunch of black and gray portraits before I even attempted the color portraits. It really helped me show value. And it really helped. And you can see right here, I'm doing a little bit more periwinkle, and it's going to come to light blue and just kind of enhancing that area a little bit more. And jumping around a little bit, just kind of getting things in there, bringing colors around. So I don't spend too much time in this area right now. This guy's probably hurting and just trying to get through it. And if we need to, if it doesn't look right all the way, we'll take another session on the hair and kind of detail out a little bit more. But not trying to rush it to the point where I'm making mistakes. Just taking it to the point where it looks right, and if it needs a second pass, I can go through it. Making sure to clean it off and looking at it, compared to the reference. Things like that. I still haven't used any white. We'll go over white when I start going through that and, the importance of that. But, I use a lot of back and forth motion. I use my mag sideways, just kind of bringing it back and forth. In the hair, I'll use a lot of Y shapes in order to make it look right. I don't use them just straight. When I first started doing these things, to practice, I draw, like I said, too. And once you get that down, you're going to have to find a client to do it. I'd work on friends, I'd hook them up and be like, hey, I know I can do this. I'd show them the drawing I did. And, and a lot of times they trust me if I could draw it, so that kind of gets you started, a lot of the tattoos I did for myself to learn. A lot of time people won't give you the chance to do it. So, that's where friends or people like that trust you, they'll give you the chance, and, you'll learn a lot from it. So it's worth that, it's worth it to take the extra time. And, sometimes on your day off, it takes it, and you go into work and you do a piece for yourself and a piece for them that you're going to learn. Take that extra time to really sit down and learn from that piece. It's worth it. I did it a bunch of times, and I've talked to a number of other artists that they've even told me in the beginning, when they started doing whatever it is they're doing, that they would practice on their friends and, hook them up, maybe just have them pay for the material or whatever, just in case, because you're practicing and go into it a few times. It's worth it. I don't know how many pieces I did on my friends like this until people actually started seeing it, and then it started working, responding, and they wanted me to do a piece like that, and they'd pay me, whatever it was, that I was charging for it. And it really helped me in the long run. It was a little few extra hours. Maybe I didn't want to go to work that day or whatever, but it really helped me out. So yeah, I'm just laying in some red right now, just kind of laying this all out. Kind of just following the directions there. It looks like it should have been a little bit darker in some areas, but like I said, if it needs a second pass, it needs a second pass, Just kind of getting these colors there. Like you say, there's a Y shape right there I use in the hair. And make sure you stretch the skin too. That skin up there was a little bit rough. It was real rubbery and needed to stretch it a lot. And sometimes it doesn't go in as quick and as easy as you want it, but just gotta stretch it real well and get it going. And another thing too is these are just the way I do my things. If you think there's an easier way, try it. A lot of these things were trial and error. I would try something and it didn't work for me. It took a couple of tries to make it right or make it what I figured it out. Like with the line work, I used to use a mag and make the lines with my mags around certain things, and Then it took me to take the liner and do that. You might have an idea that might make something better. Try it out. Don't be afraid to try things. Just make sure that it's thought out and that you could fix it. If it is something that might not work. But it's gonna take that. It's gonna take those mistakes to learn. And like I was saying earlier on pieces like this, it doesn't have to be. It got to be close to the picture and everything like that. It has to have likeness, things like that. But that's the thing. It doesn't need to be perfect. You're just trying to find the just and the feeling and emotion of the picture. So if you're following the colors and getting pretty close and the value and just making the shapes right and they're close enough, it's going to look like the person. It's going to have that feeling. You shouldn't stress on being too perfect. It'll waste too much of your time and it's just not going to be worth it. You really want to just kind of have fun with it and, it's a learning experience. You're not going to be able to do this the first time. It's going to take a few times and then you're going to find your own little tricks and, but if you can draw it, you can tattoo it. That's with anything. If you can draw it, you can tattoo it. There's no difference there. That's one of the things that a lot of people forget is that, yeah, you're dealing with needles and it's permanent, and there's not an eraser or anything. But if you can draw it, you can tattoo it and that's just how it is. It's as simple as that. You just gotta throw everything out the window and be like, you know what, I'm gonna attempt this like I'm gonna draw it and do it, Do it the way you would draw it. I'm just kind of blocking it in. You can see it really coming and developing now. You can see it really getting close to being done, Now I'm just kind of sketching in the background of the hair right there, not spending too much time. A lot of time it's good too, like to leave that kind of stuff loose. It's not going to take too much attention away from the face. You got to make decisions like that. Like I said, I made decisions where I was going to outline and make it crisper, and I made decisions where it was going to be a little bit loose. And sometimes, top of the heads, necks, clothing, it's nice to be able to make it, perfect, but sometimes it's good to kind of make it a little bit simpler, kind of simplify it, and it's going to work well because then your eyes are going to draw more towards the sharper areas. So like right here, like I was telling you earlier, I'm bumping up the blue, making it a little bit brighter, fading it off, but you can see that blue and those colors are throughout the face. It's in the makeup. It's on the other side of the head. It's going to bring your eye all the way through the piece. It's going to look right. You got to think about these things. Background and foreground, need to work together. Just fading things off, making it look clean. Those few extra minutes will make it look a little bit cleaner. And there's still work to be tied in and stuff like that, but it's close enough. And just in case you just say you don't see that client again, you got to make it look a little clean. Just say they move or they flew in or they're from far or something. You won't see them for a while. Yeah, so now I'm using the tangerine in all these little highlighted areas in the hair. Probably tangerine and maybe orange in some areas, maybe some pink, depending on what I see. But yeah, it's a really good highlight color right here. It's like a perfect mix of like red, orange, and pink. It's a really nice color. And I use it a lot of in my blood and stuff. And I usually used to just stop it at red, but with this color, it's really given me a lot more to play with and get it a little bit lighter value in there. But see all this skin that I left open, the little gaps I kind of go through and kind of making those little strands finished. And now you can see like through the neck, like when you look at it, like what I was talking about with the shadowed areas, like the purples in the neck and things like that, really creating like, that chin to pop out. Keeping that chin real true and warm and then dropping back underneath where that chin is in the neck, and just kind of following those shapes, like those little shapes. You see it, it's a neck, but it's just got like this weird blurriness to it that's just, drops in the distance. So yeah, put some Bactine on her and looks like I'm going to do some little browns. kind of going through. Like I said, sometimes I'll go through and lay a color and it isn't dark enough. So I'll go through and kind of fade over it really quick, you know? You just got to be careful. You got to really pay attention to the skin. You got to really pay attention to that you're not overworking that area, you know? That's why I run my machines light, you know what I mean? Because you want the minimal amount of trauma. I mean, it's going to slow you down. That's a given. It's going to slow you down, but sometimes it's worth it to slow down, I see that a lot. A lot of people, trying to do this stuff, they're running their machines really hard, really fast, and it's just, they end up looking really choppy and just really not working out. So I used a 5 round there, and I kind of threw down some, light blue, purple mix, and touching up those little highlighted areas. So yeah, kind of laying out this tangerine, going around that little highlight in the nose. The more you do this stuff, the more theories you're going to come up with on your own. So, and that's important. That's what's going to make it yours. You never want to be like anyone else. You just want to kind of make it your own. And that's where it is coming into, like, looking at what I'm doing here, taking it and then applying whatever your ideas are and whatever you know. You know what I mean? And making your own decisions. And that's why the whole time I've been talking about, like, the decisions you make. It's going to make who you are, your style, or whatever choices, why people come to you, things like that. They're going to like the decisions you make. Or they're not going to like the decisions you make, But it's good if you're just making them. So it looks like I'm putting a little bit back team. We're going to do some highlights probably now. Looks like it's just soaking. Once we get to the highlights, it's really, really important to pay attention. It's really easy to get, do overuse of white. Sometimes you use too much white, it'll make something look like waxy or plasticky or something like that. You want to give it natural, make it look natural. That's why I don't use a lot of white in the flesh tones and things like that. Like, I'll mix it down to white, but a lot of times if I can get away with using like the flesh tone mixed down with whatever color it is and making it that light, that's what I'll do. It works out better that way. That way, when I do put my true whites in there, it's really true white and they look a lot more wet, or the glistens right, So now I'm putting some highlights in the lips, really paying attention to where the highlights are in the lips, and not really, like, taking my time with them. Really rinsing that machine out, making sure that tube is clean. I added a little bit more highlights on the other side of the lip just to kind of show that shape a little bit more and a little more wetness. So this is really important, is that little tip of white I put right there. I used white, I tapped it in the water and then kind of faded it out into the other colors. A lot of this white I'm using isn't straight white. I'll tap it in the water. Only where I want it really, really opaque is where I'll use it just solid, But you see, like, I'm fading it off. I'm not just doing lines. Like, I'm actually working into the other colors that I'm using, Around the eyes are really important. Paying attention to where that exact white is in the eye. These ones I'm kind of adding a little bit more to add a little bit more shape. It's not straight white. It's like a watered down white. You can use white in different values. You don't got to use it so opaque everywhere, just where you want it, real solid. And usually it's like right inside the eyes is where I want it. See, like, too much white, like right around the eyebrows might not work, But see, there's like a pinkish white right there. I'll do it right there in that little brow area. I'll kind of run through the whole thing with the 5 round running really, really light. It's like a pink, like a magenta, and like white mixed. Not usually straight white. And then if I see things that need to be done, like that little bit of brown, I need it a little bit above the eyes. So I go through it and add a little bit more. It's better to build your darks like that, because sometimes you go too dark and it's just too dark. Sometimes things like that, like the white in the hair, probably doesn't have to be necessary. Probably work a little bit more if you use it just in the eyes, and the lips. I don't know. It's all about decisions, you know? See, and that's like a watered down white right there. You know, just kind of fading it in, not like so straight. Maybe that's a little bit of flesh tone mixed with white. Yeah, so just be real careful. You know, you don't want to stick too many lines straight. You want to make sure there's a reason why the white's there. You know, especially if the picture has it, you know, you don't want to make up the whites too much. A lot of times I'll hit it real fast like that. That way it isn't real solid. It just kind of is there a little bit, but not too much. So yeah, it looks like we're pretty much close. I mean, there isn't much left. So yeah, one thing that's really good is if like I said, when you're done with these pieces, you take it into Photoshop and make it black and white, desaturate it, and then you can see the value, you know, and make sure you got that. See right here, I'm kind of going over the flesh tones that I left real quick, you know, real light, real quick, just kind of hitting them. That way, you know, if the value was off a little bit, that I'm looking at it as a whole now, you know, I can adjust it. But you got to be really careful when you do that. That's why I use these long taper bug pin needles, because it allows me, you know, the needles are a little smaller in diameter. They're long tapered. They let me go in and out of the skin without abusing the skin so much. I'm actually using a lot of white. But I'm not using it so solid in all the areas. I'm just using it solid in the areas I want it, like inside the lips and in the eyes. Around the eyes, it's not so solid. It's a little bit more fast, real quick hit. It's not like a straight line. You know. I'm just kind of going off of the tips of those, really paying attention to detail, going off of the tips of those eyelashes, you know, and putting a little bit of blue. It looks like we're pretty close, you know. It looks like it's about to be called, you know. Looks like I'm just looking at studying it, you know, paying attention to my reference and looking at the tattoo and seeing what I could add, what I could change, or seeing what's going on, you know. It looks like there's, you know, a little bit need to be done in the hair and things like that, but it's pretty much finished, you know. You could call this a finished tattoo and it'd be fine. And there it is. There's the final picture of the tattoo, and you could see all the color choices and how I was talking about warm and cool and white highlights. And there it is. It's about 7.5 hours worth of tattooing. And hopefully you learned some things and got some ideas and some inspiration. And hopefully I can see what you guys are doing next. Thanks.